Okay, that's great. Come on. We'll put it upstairs.
Good evening, everyone. There it is. That was catching like TV right now. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Little Elm High School. We appreciate you coming for this opportunity to have our Honorable Congressman Burgess join us this evening. We thank you for your participation. We thank you for your time and being here. Just a few housekeeping items. In honor of respect, we ask please approach the Congressman with respect and ask him questions. Be cautious of this time. Also, we'd like to know and ensure that you turn off your cell phones so that you do not ring during the event. Being a part of the realm is extremely important to me and to members of our community. We appreciate every opportunity we have for you as a community to come out and see us and speak with us as a district. This right now represents a great time for us, and the fact that we have a congressman who is willing to come and speak with us and spend time with us and answer questions, particularly in a town hall fashion. We feel that it's really important. We feel honored that will take place. So if you have a moment, of course, think about your questions, which you would like to ask the congressman, and of course you'll have time to answer as many questions as you possibly can, and we'll kind of move through this. For this evening, what we look to do is just as a quick agenda item, we'll have this introduction. We'll also have some introductions from the high school. We'll have our troop scouting introduction, as well as our honor guard. we'll have our colors and our pledge of allegiance, and then right there, from there, we'll go straight into the elected officials, introduction for the congressman, and then we'll go into the town hall meeting. At this time, I would like to introduce a couple of people from staff who are very important here. First person I'd like to introduce is our acting superintendent, Mr. Matthew Gutierrez. Please stand. Round of applause. Next, I am extremely excited to introduce another member of staff who just joined us. We're very excited to have her. And she is now the Little High School principal. Her name is Miss Renee Pentecost. Thank you. At this time, we want to introduce the Honor Guard and Scout leaders. Mr. Michael McCullough, who is a Scout leader. And is it back there? And we'd like to present colors. Please stand.
Color guard attention. Color guard advance. Will you please give me the scout salute? If you are not in uniform, please place your hand over your heart. Color guard hold. Color guard prepare to post the colors. Color guard post the colors. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will you please join me in the Texas pledge?
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
2. Color guard reform. Color guard return to post. Color guard hold. Color guard at ease. You may be seated.
Let's give our 245 a big round of applause. Once again, I'm Delion English, President of Little Elm School Board. What we'd like to do right now is introduce some of the elected officials who have decided to come out and visit with us, which we really appreciate. First up, I'd like to introduce a couple of people in our city who are city council members who we really enjoy being here. The first person we'd like to introduce is David Hillard and Mrs. Amy Hillard, who are our mayor of town. Please stand. Next, we introduce several of our council members who also are in attendance. First one is Michael McCullough. He's a city council member in place 1. Mr. McCullough, thank you, sir. Next, we'd like to introduce Ms. Katie Gibson. She's a city council member in place 5. I'd like to introduce Mrs. Stephanie Shoemaker. She's a city council, place 6. We also have several people who are here representing. Mayor David Shutt from Providence Village is here. Please stand. Ms. Shutt, We also have some other people here, and Representative Pat Collins' office, Chance Watson. Thank you, Chance. We also have Jean Mueller. She's a SRC for SB5. Say thank you for being here also. And we also have a representative for Ron Simmons, Zach Flores, which please stand. Now at this time, we're going to go ahead and go into the town hall staff. Now I have this big thing laid out for Congressman Burgess, and he said, let's make sure I keep it short, so we'll keep it short. Real quickly, let me introduce Congressman Burgess to everyone. Most people know his name, and they realize that he's spent at least 3 decades practicing medicine for us. And he's been a congressman since 2002. So at this time, please allow us a warm welcome for Congressman Burgess, please.
I think they got me hot bars, so let me let this down. So thank you very much for the introduction. You did it just the way I told you. It was very short. Because after all, what we're speaking about is not for you to hear me talk, but for me to hear you. And that is why I'm here this evening. I'm grateful that so many of you came out. It's hard to believe that we're already into the month of August this year. It has been an eventful year. It will continue to be a very eventful year. The main thing I wanted to talk to you about this evening before I take your questions is you may have been aware of some of the things that were going on in Washington on 13th Friday last week. Of course, the bill that was coming to the floor was the culmination of several weeks of work to deal with what appears to be a crisis in people coming across the border from South Texas, particularly the Rio Grande Valley sector, unaccompanied minors, which has just simply overwhelmed the system. The President had asked for $3.7 billion to deal with the problem. The difficulty was to get them look into those raising agencies, and they couldn't really account for the amount of money that had already been given for the year. So the question of what are we spending more money on, and where are these monies going to be directed? And then the other issue of until we do reach a solution where, in fact, we're going to reduce or remove the people that are coming in, you have to stop the flow. You just simply cannot go in and solve the problem as long as you have the numbers of people coming across the border. 1st of July, I went down to McAllen and visited with the people at the intake section at Westlaco. That's where principally the unaccompanied minors were taken when they arrived. 1,300 a day were being apprehended, 1,300 a day were being processed, 90 were being placed somewhere else. So obviously that's a big bottleneck in the system. Now, the reports out today that the numbers are down. I think that's good. What are the reasons that the numbers are down? Well, they're less clear. So the news may not be so good. This may just simply be a temporary seasonal lull because the temperatures are quite warm in South Texas, and perhaps there are just fewer people attempting the transit across central Mexico. Or it may be that all of the activity, whether you agree or disagree with all the words that have been said, that the message has been received that, hey, this is not the free pass that we were led to believe that it was. Which gets back to the issue, if you're going to solve the problem, in my opinion, we're going to have to do something about the deferred action for childhood arrivals. When the President made that unilateral decision in June of 2012, looking forward, I thought there are going to be unintended consequences of this. I didn't realize they were going to be, I didn't realize that this, unaccompanied minors coming across from Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, were going to convert to the degree that they did. But we knew in June of 2012, when the President makes a unilateral action like that, without going through the legislature, that there are going to be unintended consequences. So to deal with that, the reversal of the deferred action for childhood arrivals had to occur. So when the House passed the bill on late on Friday evening, the principal part of that was to reverse, or at least no additional funding for the deferred action for childhood arrivals. Suspend the program, because without suspending the program, there was no way to stem the flow of people coming into this country. What had you told me? Send the National Guard to war, send the children home. The bill that passed the floor of the House basically did those two things as well. There were some changes in the 2008 asylum law that would facilitate the more rapid removal and sending children back home. Several of our members went down to visit with leaders on Guatemala and El Salvador and asked the question, do you want your children back? And they said, yes, they did. So we are going to help them achieve that goal. Finally, the fact that the governor had sent the National Guard to the border, it wasn't the president who called it the National Guard, it was the governor. There was some discussion as to whether or not Texas would be able to be reimbursed for that because it was a gubernatorial call-out, not a presidential call-out. If a bill that was passed on the floor of the House on Friday night would make the funds available to reimburse any governor, any governor of the border state who felt that they needed to call up the National Guard for protection along the border. So that did occur, which would allow Texas to be reimbursed for the activities of the National Guard and Governor Perry called for. One other thing that passed, and with everything else going on, sometimes things get lost in translation. The Veterans Affairs Agency has really had a lot of problems. It has had it for years. When I was an intern at Parkland Hospital, I was down at LSDA for 2 months. There were problems back in the 1970s. But I don't think anyone had ever seen a problem quite like the keeping of tulips. At first it happened in Phoenix, and then other hospitals were uncovered as well. That is, veterans were kept on a secret list until they could be put on the public appointments list so that the hospital would look good in the timing of getting a veteran in for getting their treatment. Not only is that wrong, it's dishonest, it's criminal, people are going to lose their jobs over that. It's about time that that did occur. So there was another bill passed right before the immigration bill came up that dealt with the funding, yes, for additional providers in the VA system, funding to allow veterans who have been put on a waiting list that is just too long for their condition, and veterans who have to travel too far in order to see someone in the VA facility. So the funding for taking care of those immediate problems, we have not fixed all the difficulties within the VA system. This was simply a stopgap in order to provide relief for those people who have been hurt by the system. Clearly, there's going to have to be continued re-examination, revamping of the VA system because, as you saw these past few months, it just simply was not working, and unfortunately, some people were hurt and hurt very badly. There are a few things going on around the world. Today, we saw that a ceasefire was agreed to between Israel and Hamas. Typically, those ceasefire periods give Hamas a chance to reload. I'm not sure how much good they do Israel, but nevertheless, I'm grateful that they arrived at the conclusion to do the 72-hour ceasefire. I hope perhaps more can come of it. And then this weekend, we saw a doctor brought back to this country who contracted Ebola, while taking care of patients in Western Africa. First time a patient with active Ebola has ever been in the United States of America. I guess the backstory, good news, part of that was it appeared that the 2 healthcare workers that had been stricken did respond to an experimental treatment that had been made available to them over the last 48, 72 hours, and it appears to have, at least in the case of the doctor who was brought back, it appears to have worked quite dramatically, if you can believe the reports that are in the press. A lot more will be forthcoming about that. I was very concerned about this outbreak in 2003 when SARS was a big deal over in Asia. I was concerned when the CDC brought back one of their workers who contracted SARS. I was very concerned about putting that person on the plane because of the risk of not just contamination of objects, but actually people who were riding on the plane who could get sick as well. We hadn't had the problem with SARS in this country that some other countries have had, and I did not want to see it spread here as it had in other locations. It turned out all right, but I had that same discussion with the CDC this past Tuesday. At that point, there were no plans to bring anybody back who was infected. Obviously, those changed over the last 5 days, so I will be doing some follow-up with the CDC to find out why the decisions were made for the change in plans and what actually happened on the ground that caused the change in plans to occur. But I'm going to stop there. I know you've got questions. Two brief housekeeping details. This is a public meeting, and I do appreciate you being here. Obviously, we'll be respectful of each other's opinions, whether we agree or disagree. The point I would try to make is I have an official stream that is going to a YouTube channel. This will be archived and available in perpetuity on my website. So if you know someone who says, oh my gosh, I can't believe I missed Congressman Burgess's great town hall meeting the other night, I should like to watch the whole 4 hours of it. They can. They can. It'll be archived up on the website. But also, to the point that these are public meetings, and obviously anything that I say to you is on the record, and anything that you say to me is on the record. And I would just emphasize that point because in this day of instant communications, anything can be up on YouTube before you can get a chance to get home. So do be mindful of that as well. We'll take questions. I am under some obligation to make sure that the custodial people have occupation of the auditorium again by 9 o'clock. So with that in mind, where do we set up the microphone? Oh, okay, the microphone's here. Oh, you got it.
Yeah, we'll set up over here, Congressman.
So I guess let's start with you over on this side, and whoever wants to be the first question, then we'll just go in order.
Yes, if we have several, if you would just line up along the wall over here, we'll go ahead and take them over.
Just a little bit. Yeah, I'd like to mention any other elected official. I believe Mrs. Meyer was also here from the Little Room School Board. And where is she at? Great. Was there any other elected officials that I perhaps may have missed or didn't sign on the cards? Okay, thank you very much.
Good evening, Congressman. I'm back again. I attended your town hall meeting in Colony, then Southbound, and our group attended the town hall meeting last year in Denton too. And I think one of my colleagues met your staffer, James Baker, on June 23, DC. I've been to DC 6 times. We are a part of a group, and we don't want to add a single new immigrant into the country. I'm going to talk about the issues faced by legal high school immigrants. And before I go to 29th November 2011 about your vote on one particular bill, I just wanted to say this, that I am representing hundreds of legal high school immigrants in your constituency, I mean, in Flower Mound, and this issue affects people born in India only. I mean, India is supposed to be an ally of the United States, but this issue is very, very important for the people in this room as well. And not many of you may be aware that the path to citizenship for a legal high school immigrant with a master's degree from the United States is 20 years. And I'm not even talking about undocumented. This issue is specifically only for people born in India and to some extent people born in China. And why this is important? So I'm not going to talk about, I mean, there are complex issues we deal with, and it's a great job that we're doing as far as border process, border security, but we are not subject matter experts on that, and we will let Congress figure that out. But there is that niche little issue. It's about when a person comes on student visa, and then the companies. I mean, I work at Microsoft, and Microsoft is not going to do anything illegal. And I came in 1999 to get my master's from the University of South Carolina. I will be getting a citizenship next year, and that will be 16 years from the time I came. And what happens is this, that while we are in the system created by Congress, we cannot do our own business until we get the green card. We cannot do our own business. We are beholden to our employer. Now, Microsoft is a good employer, we are fine. But then there are tens of thousands of other legal high school immigrants. They are beholden to the employer. It does not benefit the people in this room. Because when a person is beholden to the employer, he is at the mercy of the employer. The moment he loses his job, he is out of status. The most important thing is, if there is a young man of 25 years, he has brilliant ideas to start a tech startup. If he is born in India, he cannot do his own business for 15 years. He cannot take off from his job for 6 months and say, let me try this and see if I can succeed. He cannot. To take care of that issue, so we are talking about job mobility and employment authorization for people who are in the line, and while they are waiting for their green card, is it possible to give them that employment authorization, that job mobility, so that they can switch employer. They can take off from work for 6 months and say, let me try this product. Let me try to invent something. They cannot do it right now. The laws and the system created by Congress was for good intention, but it is not helping. To take care of that issue, there was a small little bill introduced by Congressman Jason Chaffetz of Utah. It was a conservative bill. It came into the House, and you voted no on 29 November 2011. 385 congressmen passed with yes. Then it went to the Senate, and we were trying to do a hotline. And then there was Senator Jeff Sessions of Alabama, Arkansas, and he said no, and that bill did not make it. It was a whole Republican bill, and I'm still trying to get an answer after 6 visits to Washington, D.C., and I've tried to meet your staffer, and I still don't have an answer about what was your concern for voting no on a bill that would have not added a single new immigrant into the country. It would have helped with employment authorization. It would have helped with job mobility for the people who have master's degrees. I'm not even talking about, and I'm not here to ask for more H-1B visas. I'm not here to talk about undocumented. I'm just talking about if you can help. And you know, if you can give me some time, I mean, I don't really, I know you, I can talk on this topic for the whole night. So, yeah. I mean, we have been to Washington, D.C. for 6 years asking for a 2-page bill that will just really, really help the country. I mean, wouldn't you want somebody to start a tech startup? I mean, that is what Austin is about. Wouldn't you want some, I mean, you know what is Silicon Valley about? Tech startups. But the law in the current form does not allow a person to get away from his employer and do something different. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing it back to the attention of the town hall.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Can I just say that the United States allows more people to come into this country, raise their right hand, take an oath of citizenship, than all countries in the world combined. 1 million people a year are taken into this country. In the 11, 12 years I've been in office, that's 11 or 12 million people. We do still have a problem with unemployment in this country, and I have pledged that until we get those problems on the right track, the bringing in of other people, whether they be low skilled or high skilled, we have an obligation to citizens who are already here, and I will keep that obligation.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Burgess, I appreciate your efforts on behalf of the citizens of Texas and the citizens of the United States. But I do have some concerns. I believe that you're an honorable man, sir, or you would be doing what you're doing. But my problem that I have with what's going on in Washington and what's going on with the federally elected representatives of the state of Texas is this. You put out this paper that shows all of these bills that you sponsored or co-sponsored and the resolutions that you signed on to in the House of Representatives. But if I understand my civics right, none of this is legal or binding because it's not been passed into law. It has to go to the Senate and the President has to sign it. The President has demonstrated repeatedly that
these up front. Thank you for reminding me to do pick one up. I get a lot of calls from a lot of people saying, you're not doing anything about this. In fact, this is one of those areas where I have spent a lot of time with. I always worry when someone gets up and says they're not the main
I believe that you are, or I would not have said that. The President's demonstrated repeatedly that he doesn't care what the law says. He's not interested in securing the southern border of the United States. He's not interested in protecting the citizens of the United States. He's not interested in protecting the workers. He's not interested in protecting the wages of the people of the United States of America. I believe he holds a significant amount of animus towards the United States of America, and this is all done by design by him. You know and I know, and you said in your opening, that nothing's going to change on the southern border of the United States until we secure the border. So I called your office, I called Mike McCall's office, I called Cruz's office, and John Corman's office, and my suggestion to you at the time that I called was to ask for retired military and retired law enforcement volunteers to be brought under the wing of the Texas Department of Public Safety, sheriff departments from Arizona, sheriff departments from New Mexico, sheriff departments from California, set them up as deputized, send them to the southern border, and turn the people away at the Rio Grande and at the fence. Because if you don't stop them from coming across the border, sir, it won't matter what law you pass. You can pass every one of these laws. The president can sign them, and then he can give the United States of America his middle finger, which is what he's doing right now. So my question to you is, are you prepared to actually call for action, not laws or orders that won't be passed? Will you call for action that will actually turn the people around at the border? Because until you do that, he's not going to make any attempt to enforce any immigration law. He's not going to stop it. So that's my question to you. And if you're not willing to do that, are you willing to publicly declare that you will not support for President of the United States any Republican candidate that does not publicly state that their first act of official legislation is to rescind every executive order that the President of the United States has enacted so far regarding this issue? Will you do that?
Well, you'll recall in late June of 2012, on the Mark Davis show, I endorsed Senator Cruz. That was about a week after the president had made what I considered to be a wrong unilateral action for deferred action for child pornography. And I was startled, to say the least, that when we got back to Washington that week, that we weren't doing anything about it. I knew we needed someone who could get in the fight, and I looked at two candidates for the United States Senate in my state of Texas. There was one who appeared to get in the fight, there was one who appeared who wouldn't. So I supported the one who would. And, this is an arduous process. It's difficult to put the brakes on some things that have already started. But at the same time, you've got to turn this one around. We've just got to. And that was the point I was trying to make during a few little opening remarks I made. Because if you don't stop the flow, then you can't solve any other problems. Now the good news is, maybe it's just the attention that everyone has put on the issue. It has slowed way down. Military bases are no longer housing the unaccompanied aliens. That's good news from my perspective. Now, there's nothing to say that when the weather cools, it may not come back again. So take advantage of the fact that it has slowed, and let's get this problem fixed. Part of fixing that problem is to rapidly turn folks around and get them back to their home country. It costs anywhere from $3,000 to $8,000 for a family to get a child brought up here by a child trafficking outfit. That's a big investment. That's likely all the money they will be able to raise in their working lives. To see that investment is in fact not getting the desired result, that's what's going to take the pressure off. Look, I've been down on the Rio Grande. This is not a tough part of the world. There's some speeds and chorizo thing. Yeah, you can put people shoulder to shoulder on that riverbank, but it's, the minute you stop one trail, there's 100 yards down the river where someone's going to go across.
No, nobody's tried it, Congressman. Nobody's done it. And so, even though you say that your people are trying to do what they're doing to stop it, the National Guard is pigeonholed into a very concentrated location. They don't even have the powers of arrest. My question, sir, and I ask it respectfully, will you call for people to assist the DPS to stop people at the border and turn them around or not?
Well, in fact, we did that with providing funding for the National Guard or providing for the governors. Look, I'm not interested in giving this president more money to spend it effectively on the border. I do believe the border governors understand the problem, and the reasons that the money that was in the bill was to provide backup for the governors. Perry said I want to send the National Guard. I think that's exactly right. Now we want to do the right thing and pay the Guard for being on board.
I will go with you, yes. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Answer the second part of the question is yes. And I have a question for you. Is this happening in state court or federal court?
In Dent County.
Okay. District court, which is
Probate court, yes.
Okay. Well, Melanie Torres is almost directly behind you. If you turn around 180 degrees, she's waving her hand. If you will sign a constituent release so we can do an inquiry on your behalf, the parts of it that are under state jurisdiction will help you find someone in the state legislature to help with that to the extent that it's affecting Medicare, which is a federal program, we can help you with that as well. But Melanie, if we need your request, your permission before doing anything, and actually you probably need your mom and dad's permission to act on their behalf. So Melanie is the place to start with that. And the answer to your question is yes, we do have someone on the staff that is assigned to do this type of investigation. And to the extent we can help you, we'll try. It sounds unreasonably coercive. I'm not that familiar with what you're describing, but it sounds unreasonably coercive.
Yes, and I would like to volunteer my services in the event that you are going to do any bills or anything about adult guardianships. I would be happy to volunteer my time because I've seen the abuse.
That's very good.
Can I get a show of hands real quick of who on here thinks President Obama has committed crimes and treason worthy of being impeached? Majority, thank you. 2011, you said President Obama deserved impeachment.
Well,
Last
it
year,
wasn't quite what I said, but carry on.
Sure. Last year, I asked last year's panel meeting if you would vote for impeachment. And then you, by ignorance, and then said...
So we took the information from you, as I recall.
Yes.
And I did have each of those things looked at.
And then you came, and then I wrote to you, and your response was a no because of the Democratic majority of the Senate.
And that's not, the answer is from the information that you brought me last year. And in fact, the House Judiciary Committee, in a general way, looked into some of these issues last December. And right now, there's no place to go with that. I mean, you could, yes, could the House bring up those articles? Sure. But what is it you're trying to do?
You have a majority of your constituents here that said that agree that President Obama deserves impeachment. Are you willing to file a bill of impeachment on our behalf?
I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay. I tried getting a petition together for you to file a bill of impeachment. Everywhere I went, I was met with people saying, can't do it because of the Democratic majority in the Senate. They won't.
Well, understand what the situation is.
Oh, I understand.
You may not be old enough to remember when this same thing happened to Bill Clinton, who had, in fact, committed a federal crime. He had lied to the FBI and lied to a federal grand jury. So it's a little bit different equation, but nevertheless, you got the goal of impeachment, you didn't get the goal of removal.
Right, and
so if your goal is simply to punish someone because you are bad at them, I suppose that could happen, but the long and short of it is I don't think you're going to achieve what you try.
the problem is that people in Congress have changed the game to where they're cheating. All of us lose.
Take a second there. I don't feel that I'm cheating.
Maybe not you, but Congress as a whole, Senate, they're not agreeing that the president can be impeached because of the Democratic...
Well, the Senate doesn't impeach. The Senate votes to
try.
remove.
Yes, you're right.
After the articles of impeachment pass the House.
But the game has changed. Politics have changed in this country to where citizens lose, politicians win. I'm pretty fed up with that. And then I realized last week that we need to win-win situation for us. And that's not through going through Congress, because they let this go on for 5 years. We're $17 trillion in debt. The president has spent $7 trillion. American lives have been lost. Famine is about to strike this country because of our open borders. This is where we talk to our state representatives. Ask and tell them to vote for a constitutional convention so that we can remove the president, Congress, and fix all the laws that they put in place. 3 states have already approved that vote for a constitutional convention: Alaska, Georgia, and Florida. If Texas joins that, if Texas joins those states, we can get the rest of the 28 states to file for a constitutional convention and fix what's going on in this country. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. I think that, say, as far as the issue of constitutional conventions are notoriously difficult to control. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Congressman, for being here. Thank you for your service. Since I could be the previous speaker's grandfather and having been in politics for 30 years, I agree with his feelings and emotions and realize what he was talking about is political process, but we're governed by the Constitution. And admittedly, maybe in a couple of years, if the Senate changes face and flavors and things like that, we might be able to accomplish what people think is impeachment, and that's removal of a bad president. But right now, we might be able to get just the impeachment, not the removal. But that moves more to my question, which is, I think the world is indeed in a chaotic state. It lacks leadership. The world in general, I don't think that we can call on the UN for any high-flying flags. The nation's in turmoil, and Congress is a mess. Congress is in Washington, D.C. I think we've just spoken about the problems that we've got with the current president. My question is a little bit more specific. What tools does the House have? Because I think most of us have given up on the Senate until at least a couple of years from now. What tools does the House have to remove or otherwise chastise the Attorney General for failing to administer the laws that are passed and that are on the books in a fair and impartial manner? And what tools do you have for cabinet secretaries, like CIA directors and other presidential appointees that seemingly are selective in how they want to enforce laws? So that's really the nature of my question.
I think one time since Civil War, there has been impeachment of a cabinet official. David Cruz was sitting here discussing that. I don't remember if that person was removed or not. But there is that remedy for a cabinet official. And you know the House twice has held a holding in contempt of Congress, civilly and criminally. That case is wending its way through the courts, and it takes time. Is there a possibility that if the court did find, and it was sustained by the appellate courts, that Eric Holder was in fact guilty of criminal contempt of Congress, would that make a difference? It might. I mean, one of the big blow-ups that Speaker Lane was trying to deal with on this border bill he was trying to bring before the House, I was a definite no the first time it came up. But even toward the end, when everything else was settled, we get pay for the National Guard, send some of the kids back, to change these tribal laws, suspend DACA. But you also had, buried within the language of that bill, was the fact that the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, would be appointing the immigration judges. Well, wait a minute. How in the world are we going to get anything sensible out of that situation? Now, I'll credit Louis Goldberg. I mean, he fought this till the last, right till the bitter end, and did at least get an agreement from the majority leader that this would be something that would be brought up. Now, right now, of course, we've got big struggle because the Senate's not going to want to take up our bill. So something is, does the president really need the money, or was that just not true? Was that not accurate? If the president really needs the money, then the Senate is going to have to pass something. The House gave him $680 million of the $3.7 billion that he requested. Most of that was reprogramming money that's already within the various departments and agencies, so it's not new spending, it's not emergency spending like what he wanted. If the president really needs the money, something is going to have to pass both houses, and something is going to have to go to the White House, just as it did with the Veterans Bill. And you can't do that unilaterally. You have to get agreement with the Senate, and that was a big fight over Bernie Sanders is actually a socialist. It's not just, that he runs on the Socialist Party ticket. So that's, Chairman Miller, to his credit, was able to overcome that and get something sensible out of the Senate. And then it went on to the president. I don't think he signed it yet, but it's on to the president for his signature. So that is, does the president need money or not? It's probably the first question as far as the border stuff goes. At some point, you are going to have to deal with the problem. Therefore, the immigration judges. Does anybody think that's anything but a fast track for amnesty? I don't. And that's why I was a no vote until right up to the end when we got an agreement that this would be dealt with if in fact it does, some agreement does happen with the Senate. But to the broader question, you know the answer. This is political. Right. The president won the re-election. How? I don't know. Why? I don't know. It took me 3 months before I was able to even think about what had just happened in November. And when the president gave his inaugural address, it was no holds barred. Every progressive, liberal item that had ever been on anyone's agenda, he laid it out there on the west steps of the Capitol. And I thought, how in the world are we going to deal with this? But, remember, I know people get frustrated with Congress. You get frustrated with Republicans. We were elected in 2010 as a majority, not because people were suddenly in love with Republicans again, but really threw us out in 2006. We're spending too much money, we weren't doing the things you wanted us to do. But in 2010, Republicans were returned to power, largely because Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid had scared everybody so bad that we were elected really as a restraining order. And it hadn't been perfect, it hadn't been pretty, but we have performed as requested. And stopping something, there was a lot of the president's agenda that was still unfinished at the end of 2010. Things he still wanted to do. Cap and trade, the carbon offset program that he's trying to do through the agency now that he couldn't get done legislatively. All the immigration stuff that he's trying to do, just on his own. But we have been that restraining order in the House. Again, it's not been particularly satisfying, but at the same time, that's the reason there are elections. When people ask me in October 2012, what's your biggest fear going into November? My biggest fear was nothing would change. And guess what happened? Nothing changed. You had the same speaker, same majority leader, same president. The same people that hadn't been able to do anything for the 2 years before are still there. Now, I'm not a political prognosticator, but everybody really says things may be different in November. The Senate could change hands. If that happened, and this is not a political discussion, just an observation, if that did happen, then there would be a difference. Because right now, Harry Reid will block anything that the House passes doesn't get past his desk. As a consequence, the president doesn't even have to register an opinion as to whether or not he thinks this or that is a good idea. But he doesn't have to exercise the details because Harry Reid is stopping everything before it ever gets to the door. That could change fundamentally after the November election. Passing the budget in the Senate is going to be an important first step. That only takes 51 votes. You don't have to get to 60 to pass a budget. And if you do, things can be brought up under budget reconciliation. And I realize this is down in the weeds a little bit, but issues under budget reconciliation only require 51 votes. So a lot of Obamacare, where we fought that battle repeatedly and we always get standing over the Senate, suddenly it comes up for a 51-49 vote, and things can happen. Same true with some of the immigration stuff as far as the funding aspect. Anything that has a budgetary component to it can be brought up under reconciliation in the Senate. So that'll be a big change. Right now, we get up here on Monday, we work, we pass something, pat ourselves on the back, and off it goes over to the Senate, and nobody ever sees or hears from us. People say, why don't you pass jobs bills? I've got a list of about 60 jobs bills that the House has passed that are waiting action over the Senate. I mean, this is the part of the equation that will be different after the next election, but the election is an important part of this. You know, a man who wants something done as far as removal. Thank goodness there is that amendment to the Constitution that says only 2 terms. Thank God, only 2 terms. And then whatever happens, whether it's, you know, someone on the Republican side, someone on the Democratic side, it can't go past January 21st of 2017.
The
So
pain is terminal.
What's that?
The pain is terminal.
Well, the pain is terminal may be too strong a word. And you know, the country is strong enough to endure to that point. I have no question about it. Now, the other question or observation on leadership, I'm with you. When they shot, the Ukrainian separatists shot that Malaysian airliner down, oh my God, remember when that happened when Reagan was president over Korea and the Russians shot down a plane that veered over the near airspace? I mean, he came on TV. That was leadership. What he said to the nation and gave all of us, when you think, what in the world's going to happen? Russia just shot down a commercial airline with a member of Congress on board. That was a big deal when that happened. What did we hear of the president after the Malaysian flight went down? This may be a tragedy. You got to think about that? This may be a tragedy? Well, it's an international incident, but you know, the lack of leadership to me was absolutely stunning that day. You know, a lot of the newscasts replayed Reagan's speech from that weekend. It was a Labor Day weekend. He was on vacation. He didn't want to talk about it, but he came back and did. Gave the address of the Oval Office. Extremely important to the country. And that's the difference. Vladimir Putin, for all of the abuse that we heap on him in the Congress, I mean, we got 80% approval maybe at home. In Russia, he's no leader. Now, I'm not leading in the right direction. He may be causing all kinds of grief very quickly, but he's got an 80% approval rating, and he is regarded as a strong leader in Russia. Right now,
as well.
yeah.
We make a decision.
You know, this country does hunger for that kind of strong leadership.
Well, we want to thank you for staying on top of the broad spectrum of important issues.
Thank you.
And we'll just pray for the Senate.
Thank you.
November.
All right. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Burgess. I've got several things to talk about, but Ron in particular, so I'll just say it. About Obamacare, we know by now that it's taken like a huge amount of our economy over, and it's given undue intrusions into our medical history. Where do you see it going from here at this rate? That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, if for the balance of this year, it's going to be 3 yards in the cloud of dust. I mean, it's going to be that hard, butt your head against the wall stuff. There is no question that there are a lot of people hurting because the law was written in the back rooms. It was written by the special interests. I thought that surely the Senate wouldn't pass it, surely the House wouldn't pass it, surely the 2012 election would turn out differently, surely the Supreme Court would rule differently. None of those things have come to pass. It has fundamentally changed the way medical care is delivered in this country, and many aspects of that will never go back. At the same time, again, we are a strong country. We are a very inventive country. I believe many of the worst are women. At the heart of it, this law is extremely coercive, and that's the individual mandate. You and I no longer have the ability to go without health insurance for whatever reason. The IRS tells us that we have to have it. That is one of the fundamental changes that I believe needs to occur. And to the extent that it can occur, probably not till after January 21st of 2017, but there are a lot of other aspects of the law that next year perhaps could come under some control, and at least put it on the president's desk and make him veto that. If it is indeed harming employment, put that forward. Put that forward and submit to the president. see if he agrees or not, but then make it very readily apparent as to are people standing on the side of employees, or are they standing on the side of the special interests? This bill, I can't emphasize enough, this bill was written by the special interests.
I'm pretty sure that a bill shouldn't originate in the Senate.
Well, the tax bill should not, for all the reasons that we see now. That it has, that has been and will continue to be litigated before the Supreme Court. Most recently, there were 2 cases, I believe, that came forward, and they said that they were not going to take them up either the federal district court or at the appellate level, but they'll continue to be pursued all in the Supreme Court. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion what the Supreme Court will find about that, because after all, in their minds, it was a tax bill. That's what allowed it to be constitutional.
Oh, and another thing about that, like, ideally, I would get the federal government out of healthcare altogether. And as for the whole of January 2017, well, unless someone like Hillary arrives as president, or he pulls an FDR or Bloomberg.
Yeah, I don't want to say that can't happen, but again, that was a constitutional amendment that did pass. So it's not arbitrary, it's not optional, it's not a personal decision, and that actually has been written into law.
Well, Bloomberg still broke. It was written into law in New York City, and Bloomberg still broke it anyway.
Correct. But that's a little bit different from the mayor of New York or president of the United States, where it's actually an amendment that was offered in the Constitution and adopted by 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate, and 3/5 of the state. I mean, that's a pretty high bar.
It's still a creepy president anyway.
All right. Thank you for your observations. I appreciate it.
I'm done.
All right.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Burgess. First, I want to thank you for your time. I know you kind of had a strange new layout here last week. In my opinion, the current administration has absolutely no regard for congressional authority, and that's very troubling to me. It just seems that the fabric of our society just continues to disintegrate, where lawlessness seems to reign. I know our country's been through periods like this before, and I know we'll persevere. It's hard to watch. I think we probably all can agree on that. Do you see any indications from either side of the aisle that there's the most remote willingness to work together, or are we to believe what we seem to hear in the media, that we've got the Democrats over here, Republicans over here, and never the twain shall meet?
Well, I would just hold up. I serve on the Energy Commerce Committee, and probably of all of the committees in the House and Senate, we've been one of the most productive the last 18 months, even in a pretty harsh environment in which we exist. And most of the bills that pass on the Energy Commerce Committee are bipartisan bills. That's because it's not an accident. We work at it. I did a bill about a year ago to try to fix one of the problems with in Medicare and driving physicians out of delivering care at Medicare, making it hard for patients to get doctors. It's a formula that just shouldn't be there anymore. In late July of last year, we passed a bill on committee 51-0. Henry Waxman was my co-sponsor. So yes, you can get to those kinds of agreements, but it takes a lot of work, and oftentimes people aren't willing to do that. On the other aspect of, you talked about the framing of the fabric, and I agree, but that's something that concerns me as well. And one of the ways that the House has determined to get a determination on are the president's excesses, in fact, are the excesses, or are we just overly sensitive toward the political parties? And that's the lawsuit that we brought against the president. That came to the Rules Committee, I also sit on it. And I got to tell you, I wasn't a big fan because we entered into that. But listening to Jonathan Turner, who was a Georgetown legal scholar, Democrat, voted for President Obama twice, believes in national health insurance, but also believes that the president exceeded his authority by changing a law that had been passed by the Congress, signed by the president himself, changing that law unilaterally without going back to Congress to get a legislative change. And as Mr. Curley said in the committee, he said, well, I'm actually on the other side politically. So this isn't so much about this president, it's about the next president and the next president. If you will, you know how things are. You know, things go forward and then you're never quite able to pull them back. And what if the next president exercises that same type of overreach? Is there going to be any pushback? So really, time is now. And again, I'll just say, I wasn't a big fan as we began those hearings, but I became more and more convinced that this is not just a worthwhile exercise, it's important. It does have to happen. Again, it's not so much about being mad at the president and trying to do something that ruins his day. It's more about, is the institution of the House of Representatives, is the legislative branch truly a co-equal branch of government? And right now, you get the impression that it's not being treated that way.
Well,
so this is an important thing as it goes forward. It won't happen all at once, it will take time, but it is important to get the issue decided. And you know, they'll bring up the fact that, I don't remember how many Democrats sued President Bush in the last administration. There were a lot. And all of those said, no, you can't bring that lawsuit because you lack standing. This is the first time that the House, as an institution, has brought a lawsuit. And it is a little bit different equation. Again, we'll see what that is.
Can you explain to me, though, a little bit more there? How does the House have standing? Or is that just in the legal minutiae? Because I've heard some lots of conservatives who indicate that their belief is there's not a judge in the land that's going to give this lawsuit a second look.
Let's see what happens. Again, Jonathan Turley, who is not of the same political persuasion I am, was pretty convincing. But again, the difference this time is because the institution is bringing the lawsuit. When Willie Doggett sued George W. Bush over something to do with, I don't even remember, but probably to do with the war in Iraq, or perhaps CIA interrogations, when he sued the president, of course looked at it and said, we cannot see how you individually are harmed. You may not disagree, you may not agree with the president, you may be in a different place politically, you may not like the war, but we don't see how you are harmed when the case is dismissed. This is different. This is the entire House bringing the action. The important thing here is that reason doesn't require the Senate. This is something to be done unilaterally by the House. Has the institution of the House of Representatives been damaged on unilateral actions of the president? And that's really the question that's going to have to be decided. Now, it's not a given that we'll go one way or the other. In fact, a lot of the legal experts who came and testified in the committee said it's 50-50. You know, it can go either way. So far from a done deal, but at the same time, this one is different from the other lawsuits that have been brought largely for political reasons. This is about the integrity of the House. This is about the integrity of the institution. And, you know, I asked the question during my brief time to question these fine men of minds that were in front of us. I mean, I got to tell you, after 4 hours of listening to law school professors, I was very glad I went to medical school, not law school. But I asked the question to Mr. Ellinger, who was the solicitor in the Solicitor General of the Carter administration. It was pretty high up as far as legal advice goes in the Carter administration. And I said, okay, so the president, the lawsuit is over the president suspending unilaterally the employer mandate. Just all at once, I'll put the again last week, said it, we don't need it anymore, so I'm not going to do it. I asked Mr. Ellinger, I said, okay, on January 21st of 2017, Ted Cruz takes his hand off the Bible and says, I promise to repeal every syllable of Obamacare. I'm going to ask Congress to help me do it, but until that can happen, I'm going to suspend the individual mandate because it's so coercive and it has no place in a free society. So I asked Mr. Ellinger, can he do that? And he said, no, he could not, because he doesn't agree with the law. And I'm going, what? Where did this argument go so long? The president can do it because he supports the law. The next president can't do it because he's fundamentally opposed to the law. That doesn't make any sense. In other words, you can do this if you're Democrat, but not if you're Republican. That is probably not a valid legal argument.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I wanted
bring up about the lawsuit. It's not the only occasion where the president has violated the Constitution and the separation of powers, and it's done in a very serious way. It's time for Congress to act now. And so I wish you, I'm urging you to do a rip of impeachment against the president, and that starts the ball rolling and having hearings and determining how he's violated the Constitution in some more than one instance.
We were actually, Professor Curley talked to that issue as well, because, how do you pick anything where
And by the way, I'm a Democrat.
Yes, sir.
So it's not Democrats only support him. No, there's a large number of Democrats that are calling for his impeachment.
Well, Professor Curley said stick with one thing that makes sense, and the suspension of that provision of Obamacare. I mean, I didn't bring my bill, but I usually take it with me everywhere I go. When you read the enacting clause of the individual mandate, it says the amendments made under this section shall be in effect after December 31st, 2013. Pretty straightforward. You read the enacting clause under the employer mandate, and it's identical. So it's pretty clear, but there's no ambiguity in the language of the law. And that's really the strength of bringing this issue. Keep it focused in one place. And there's all kinds of things. Yes, you can go into the deferred adjudication for childhood arrivals. Yes, you could go into other areas where the president suspended parts of his own law. But one place where really the highest likelihood of success is the suspension of the employer mandate. I don't know if
that's an impeachable offense.
Well, let's have a litigation, and
the Congress can determine that through the hearings and having a special prosecutor. Nixon, this guy has done as much stuff as Nixon, if not more, and yet no impeachment. And they tried to impeach Clinton over an affair.
Well, he did lie to the federal grand jury. He lied to the FBI. Which really not supposed to do that.
You're also not supposed to rule by fiat like a dictator.
Well, you do get into some areas that are open to interpretation, but nevertheless, the lawsuit is proceeding.
I'd like to see a little stronger action, impeachment. That will open up the way.
And I just asked you the same question. What do you get for that?
After that, you can possibly meet, because I've lobbied for the Glass-Steagall. I've seen it pass the House on more than one occasion, only to be just shot down and not even discussed, because Harry Reid, which is Obama's, if Obama was in trouble, Harry Reid would be losing his power to do that.
I don't know that I agree with that.
I think it's very possible.
The issue is political, and it is going to be incumbent upon conservatives to win some elections in November.
But I think we need to enact Glass-Steagall as rapidly as possible, because the system is real close to teetering on collapse. And we need to separate out the $750 trillion of derivatives speculation from the banking system and take the banking system to loan money for productive investment in industry and agriculture once again. Because the amount invested is half what it was 6 years ago. But the amount of money flows is 16 times as great. Most of it is into hedge funds or insurance agencies are getting financing, but no factories. And we need Glass-Steagall, and we need to return to a national system of banking.
Well noted. Thank you.
I would caution those who are charging you on the impeachment road. One thing we get from impeachment is Joe Biden as president. That is always where the impeachment confidence with Joe Biden's backstop. Exactly. First, I'd like to thank you for coming down. I really like the little ones at the top of the list on the right-hand side. I know that's just alphabetical, but I still appreciate it.
We've done that on purpose.
We do appreciate you coming to town. The question I have is really for you in the House. Anytime you have a divided government, there's always going to be a weakness there, especially on the Republican side right now. You're controlling one part of one branch, you don't have the authority to do all that you want to do. My concerns are related to the leadership in the house itself. I've never been a big supporter of Speaker Boehner's, and I wonder if you think that leadership role will change in the coming Congress.
You know, it's difficult to predict. I don't think a month ago or a month and a half ago, anyone would have predicted that last week was Eric Cantor's last day as majority. I was kind of shocked. May not have shaken things up as much as we would have liked, but a little beneath the surface, things were significantly shaken up. I don't know what that means for November. I mean, you know how House leadership is elected. We have the election and the general election in November, and the Republican Democratic conferences reconvene sometime that following week, and it's where people offer their names to run for leadership offices. I don't know. Last time there really wasn't a lot of choice offered. No one stepped forward. This time may be different.
So a lot of what we hear is just media tidbits and articles and things like that. What's your perception of his leadership role in Congress?
Well, it's a tough deal. We're not an easy group to deal with. I mean, last week was case in point. They thought they prepared a law that was just fine and dandy. The president asked for $3.7 billion. They cut it down to $685 million. They did this, they did that. But the long and short of it was, I didn't feel like we were going to solve the problem. So when they came to me and said, we have your support on this, I said, no, you don't. I said, why? I delineated for them. They'll do something about the deferred action for travel lives. Everything else is almost meaningless because they're not going to solve the problem. In my opinion, that's what lit the fuse 2 years ago. It caused this problem to happen, and we saw it the full effect in May and June of this year. So if we weren't serious about tackling that, what were you going to get? Changing the asylum laws enough so that we could, treat the children of Honduras the same as you treat the children from Mexico and from Canada, for that matter. That is, if they come across the border without the proper authority, they're legally sent back. That's what it's going to take, in my opinion. The people in Honduras are going to have to see that no matter how much money they spend, they're not going to get they're not going to be able to achieve their heart's desire. I wasn't in agreement with Speaker Baker, and I told members of the leadership, don't count on me for my support. It's a great deal of meeting until Thursday afternoon. It turned out they did. So, look upon that as, I realize that was a marginal victory because the Senate left down without doing anything. Arguing was whether or not they'll even take the bill out. But I think something fundamentally happened between Thursday and Friday in the House of Representatives, and a lot of maturation of House conservatives that came forward and said, look, this is just not something that we have any business supporting. And they thought, what would you have? And that's when several people stepped forward and actually put forth the ideas that were incorporated into the bill that eventually passed. And I'm not going to tell you that it was easy. There was a lot of anxiety, but at the same time, any job worth doing is worth shedding a few tears over, and that is just part of it. Immigration issue divides this country. It's not. It shouldn't be easy. If we can stroll up there and just okay, we got everybody on board for this, let's go ahead and do it. If that's the way things work, you will see the kind of anxiety that you've seen around the country these past 3 or 4 weeks when people realize what's happening down and where we're going to go. So, is the leadership likely to do everything just as I want from this point on? No. But at the same time, they did listen. They did listen to House conservatives, and they changed the law in my opinion, in a measure that was significantly improved.
Thank you. Yes, sir. I can do this all day.
All right.
We're at the end of our line. I just want to let you know in time-wise this works out as well. So.
All right.
How you doing, Mike?
Pretty
good. My talk is about the veterans.
Yes, sir.
Well, they bit about the situation about cleaning up the garbage pit that the VA is saying. They're not taking care of us like they're supposed to. They're not paying our bills like they're supposed to. We get taken to another hospital. Things are getting totally out of hand.
Let me ask you a question. I mean, are there instances where you have had a problem?
Plenty of them. I've already turned some of the stuff into melon.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was going to ask.
It's just like there was a tumor found in my head in December. The VA kept putting it off, playing their silly games. To where I finally passed out in May, was rushed to, didn't read it on the doctor. They had found it originally, took it out that night. But why do they keep doing this to the veterans? Why isn't anything being done by Congress and the Senate to stop this? They're more concerned about the illegals than they are about the men and women that have fought for this country. We have talked about this before.
Well, it was important to me that the bill to deal with, and as I started out this evening, I said, it's not going to fix all the problems, but this is a way of putting some pressure on the members to help people get the attention that they need. No reason in the world that there should be two sets of schedules kept. And no reason in the world when that's discovered that someone cannot be fired, and no reason in the world that if necessary criminal charges can't be brought. So that did change this week. Or last week.
The criminal charges should be brought, period, on what they do to us. It's not right. Men and women are dying because of it. We didn't fight for our country to be treated like this. You look at what our grandfathers and fathers did to save this country. And then we fought DS war in Vietnam that cost thousands of lives, and now they're treating us like dogs. And it's not right. And it's up to the politicians to do something about it. They've got to clean up the garbage pit that's happened. The VA should not have nurse practitioners taking care of us. They need doctors and nurses there. Nurse practitioners don't know what the hell is going on. The talk that I wanted to say tonight is the public needs to know how we feel as veterans and what we've done for our country, and then to be treated like dogs. You look at the thousands of men and women that are dying because of the situation today. Basically, that's all I have to talk about.
That's it. Well, you have, as far as your surgery is concerned, okay. Because that should be covered. We should be no question about it.
What the VA has done to that man is not acceptable. It's not enough to somebody lose their job. They should go to jail for what they're doing here. So let's take the perfect world. We've been back to Senate, 52 seats or so in November and January 2017. We have Ted Cruz as our next president. That's wonderful. But I don't think anybody in this room is naive enough to think that that solves the problem, because it's the unelected bureaucracy, the unaccountable bureaucracy that seems to be actually running the government, not the president, not the Congress. We've got the Education Department putting out Common Core. We've got the Department of Justice failing to enforce the laws. We've got the Environmental Protection Agency getting ready to shut down 40% of our electric generation. And just like with the immigration, the solution seems to be stop the magnets. And to me, the magnet of the problem, the reason why the problem is in Washington is the money. We have $4 trillion, annual expenditures coming out of there. So if we just take one department, our favorite one, the IRS, and we look at what they've been doing, it's not only are they not accountable and elected, but they are not politicized, which, by the way, is just typical of virtually every department we have out there. So we have to start someplace with solving the underlying problems of the unelected permanent branches, fourth branch of government. So it seems to me that the way, if we want to follow the money, if we want to stop the magnet of the IRS, we eliminate the income tax. And we go to, you pick your flavor, flat tax, fair tax, you name it. But something that's got to do is to stop the ability of the unelected bureaucrats and the lobbyists and the special interests from, running up the trough and drinking of our money in absolutely exorbitant amounts. So, is it, in your opinion, is it possible, or is it in your desire to eliminate the income tax and to move our country to a fair or flat tax in the next session?
Well, I've had a flat tax legislation that I've introduced every session of Congress. My predecessor was not new with me. My predecessor had in fact, wrote a book about flat tax that I read, and I was just a regular guy. I said, this is the way to go. It makes so much sense. And I still believe that today. In the House budget that was written, Paul Ryan, chairman of the Budget Committee, actually put a paragraph in the committee report that talked about Robert Rawls' fair tax and my flat tax. So we've got to go in the direction of fundamental tax reform, whichever way it is. We need to have the debate, have the arguments, and get to a system where, you're right, it is just simply unworkable. And of course, now you're faced with the specter that the IRS is going to administer health care, and that's just even more problematic. It's getting worse.
Churches, now they're talking about going after churches. So 78,000 pages or whatever it is currently of the tax. So what is your impression? Is there momentum? Is there any kind of movement to actually do something about this?
I remember talking to Congressman Arnold about this after I read his book, and he told me as soon as President Dole was sworn in, I expect to get it. Because it actually, well, that didn't happen. I do think it will take the referendum on the presidential election. I mean, someone needs to run on this issue. And I'm a flat tax person, but someone needs to run on flat tax or fair tax or two tax codes, two tax rates, whatever, and make it a winning issue where you get the country behind you and it becomes a competitive at the polls. This, after all, didn't like what happened, but President Obama could point to his election in 2008 and say, I've got a mandate to do what I did to health care. Everyone voted for me for that reason, and then they re-upped in 2012. I don't necessarily agree with that philosophically, but it is going to take you back. You're not going to achieve that kind of change in the Senate elections in this year, in the midterm elections. This takes a referendum that is actually at the presidential level. And if you had whoever, and I haven't never even talked to Ted Cruz about where he is on flat tax or fair tax, but you would need someone to champion their vision for what a similar and fair tax system is in this country, let them prevail in the polls, and that's when you're going to see action on it. In the meantime, what happens on the flat fair tax stuff? Well, Democrats don't like either one. So it's basically Republicans fighting Republicans, and the Democrats, even when Terry Gay said, let me just try to get some sense into the system, nobody would work with it. And as a consequence, nothing happened this year.
So the solution to the border problem is seal the border. The solution to the financial problem is particularly the IRS.
Very good. What am I supposed to do here? We've got one more question coming up. And I do need say thank you. Thanks for coming out tonight. Thanks for participating. After all, our democracy is a participatory sport. I did want to point out that there are several people on the staff who work both in the Washington office and the district office. The reason I want to point them out to you is they don't work for me, they work for you. So starting with Kelly Strickland, Chief of Staff, who's down in Washington. Cindy Allen is the legislative assistant who helps me with healthcare stuff. Everyone, Jamie Baker has gotten, oh, there he is, Jamie. Legislative work. It's his job to make sure the microphone works, the camera works, so he does want to answer responsibilities. And also down from Washington is Jill Shatson, who is the communications director. Most of you know her, the district director. Megan Everett. Megan Everett, who also works in the district office. Jenny Loomis, who is a constituent liaison. Joan Self, who's a district assistant. Joan will sign people in out front, so she may be out front. Melanie Torres, who also works in constituent services. Constituent Service Director is the appropriate title, and then Robin Vaughn is the Deputy District Director, and I think Robin may still be up front as well. I also wanted to introduce to you that we have 3 interns working with us tonight. Logan Davidson is at the University of North Texas. Robbie Milligan from Pennsylvania State University. And Laura Peavy, also the University of North Texas. So, for friend's sakes, we don't pay interns, they just do it because they love you so much. All right, time for our last question. Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here.
Yes,
I've got just a couple of real short comments, and then I've got a question for you. One is just a matter of housekeeping. I noticed there's one town missing from the list up there, and I may have to talk to your staff about that one, but town of Providence Village.
Oh, for heaven's sakes, you're right.
Anyway, one thing.
So
I know.
Maybe take care of that before tomorrow.
One brief comment just for everyone. I'm so thankful that as flawed as our system is, that we have the opportunity to talk to our representatives that come here and actually listen to what we have to say. On our worst day, that's still better than so many places. So, my question is, one of the things I haven't heard discussed enough, in my opinion, is the enormous amount of money flow that is happening with the immigration situation right now. There are trains loaded up, coming across multiple borders of countries coming here, filled with people. There's a lot of coordination that makes that kind of thing happen. You're not going to sneak a train across the country. I know that if I was to put $500 in my son's hands and go, hey, head up 2,000 miles and make it to America, his success rate would probably not be that great. And to me, I think that following the money is a great investment of time, and to see what some of those motivations are. And I want to know if that's part of what's been going on with any of the investigations with regard to the immigration situation.
Well, not nearly enough. But I mean, you're correct. I mean, the traffickers, child traffickers, who really don't want the word to be used to describe it, are actually advertising on TV as well and all around us. They act like they're social workers. We can help you get your child what they desire, which is, it's open season up in America. You can get there and get in. They're not going to arrest you. They're not going to send you back. This is a good deal for you. So they're charging anywhere from $3,000 to $8,000 to take a child across central Mexico. Those kind of things. You see the pictures are right on the top of the freight train. I mean, it's just absolutely unbelievable. It's unbelievable that anyone would think that's okay to do that to a child. And then when the president said, no, I'm not going to go to the border because it's a photo op. I'm sorry, if the president goes to the border, it's a big deal. Every television camera in the Western Hemisphere, many from stations that broadcast particularly or or exclusively to Hispanics in Spanish, if the president stood up, say, I just toured the facility, I saw the children there, mom and dads in Honduras, mom and dad in Guatemala, El Salvador, let me tell you something, do not send your children with a child trafficker to the United States of America. Number one, they can get hurt, and hurt badly, and number two, they are going to be sent home. If the president would have done that, this problem would have instantly, because that's the kind of ability that the president has. A lot of people don't remember 1992, Bill Clinton was running against George Herbert Walker Bush. George Herbert Walker Bush there were a number of Haitians that had gotten in rather rickety boats and were trying to get to America. They wanted out of Haiti and wanted to be in this country. George Bush picked them up in the high seas, took them to Guantanamo, not to Miami, took them to Guantanamo, and then repatriated them in Haiti, saying, you are not a political asylee, you're an economic refugee, and you do not have asylum status to come into the United States. Pretty tough words. And Bill Clinton just eviscerated him during the debate. Said, this man is heartless. I will be humanitarian. I will do the right thing by those people who are trying to get to this country from Haiti. So Bill Clinton wins the election. And about a week and a half before Inauguration Day, they said, Mr. President-elect, every available person in Haiti is building a boat. And they're going to launch when you take your hand off the Bible. And we got a big problem coming on with that. And the president, to his credit, did the right thing. He went on Voice of America with the translator and said, if you are contemplating coming to this country, let me tell you something, there will be no change from the previous administration's policy. It was tougher to say. Ken Kennedy was mad at the order because he thought the president went back on his promise. They didn't, but at the same time, it was the right thing to do because he kept all those people off the high seas. The same is true. I mean, yes, people can drown coming from Haiti, but people are drowning in Mexico. And again, I went to the water station in Mexico. I've got a 5-year-old grandson. I know what a 5-year-old boy is like. There were about 5 5-year-old boys sitting on this concrete bench. Now you just imagine, put 5 5-year-old boys on the concrete bench together, what's going to happen? I mean, they'll be poking at each other, they're not going to sit still. These kids were immobile. Can you imagine what those 5-year-olds have been through? That they were scared to move. Someone says, sit on the bench and don't say anything. That's exactly what they did. The problem that I went into, it looked like something out of an elementary school. Someone had built these little plywood cubby holes, and it was full of little piggy backpacks. And these are elementary school girls that had come across Mexico. Who in their right mind thinks that's a good idea? If the asylum law was there to prevent child traffickers from taking advantage of children, it's now being used in a perverse way to make it easier for people to traffic children. It needs to be changed. It must be changed. And that's what we did at the end of last week. I'm really disappointed the president could have gone a long way toward solving this problem. He refused to do it. Just because we've talked about it a lot this past month, and sometimes it's been some pretty tough talk, but some of that message is getting back down to Central America. There's a lot more that needs to be done, but it didn't need to be this bad. It really didn't.
Well, I would love for us to start viewing it as a slow invasion rather than a problem with immigration, because that's really what it is.
Well, and then it overwhelms the system. I mean, if you just, a coyote will take a mother with 3 children halfway across the river, stand them on a flat rock with the Russian water all around, go back to the Mexican side and call it a high water rescue. So basically, it's the first responders in McAllen who are completing that last leg of the journey for the people who are trying to come in. I mean, they can exploit our system because they know basically Americans are people that would take care of them. 1 million people a year come here legally to take the oath of citizenship. All of the countries of the world combined don't do what we do. Germany is the only one that comes close on a percentage basis, but they're losing population, and they realize from a practical standpoint they need to do something about that. The State Department puts a cap on the number of people who come in as political refugee assignments. It's currently about 70,000 a year. The children that are coming across as unaccompanied minors are outside of the State Department's cap. So the fact that 90,000 have come across the border this year doesn't, there's no downward adjustment on the State Department cap because of that. So, just start putting the numbers together. Yeah, we are a very generous country. George Will, I don't normally really appreciate the stuff he has to say, but when he said on one of the Sunday shows a week or two ago that, we can deal with 58,000 children in this country. Yeah, we can. But that's not the point. The point is there's going to be another 58,000, and another 58,000, and another 58,000. And at what point do we become overwhelmed as a country? So we have to put the brakes on that. Yes, we're good-hearted people. I mean, I've certainly made contributions to a nonprofit of choice to help people who are in difficulty there. But don't just keep sending more and more children across Mexico, across the border. That's not the answer. Thank you for
When Mayor Cantor was removed and the election came out for Robert Labrador, I want to thank you for supporting him. I know that wasn't necessarily a big, easy vote, but I understand that that's what you're voting for.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here.
Thank you. We're going to wrap up so we can turn the auditorium back over to the school. Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you. Sure. And I am going to do a few pictures over here. Oh, yeah. All right.
At this time, we'd like to invite some of the elected guests. Would the members from the City Council please come up? All the members of the City Council and their spouses. Take an opportunity to take a picture with the council, please. Will the staff from the ISD please come up? Staff from ISD? Staff? Any more to staff here from the ISD?